academics, artists, journalists, and curators, and we're dedicated to promote social justice and human rights in Mexico. So what does that mean exactly? That means that we start legal actions, we do research, and also engage in awareness campaigns, all to make the international law responsive to Mexico. But today we're here on a very special occasion. We're holding a press conference to explain you, to give you information about the complaint we're filing against the Rabobank. The complaint is filed by SMX Collective as a whole, but also by Fernando Hernandez, who's sitting here next to me, because he is the family of one of the victims of drug violence. Furthermore, this legal action is part of a broader campaign. I will explain more about that in a minute, but first of all, I want to give the floor to Goran Slater. He's a human rights lawyer here at Rabobank Oliveira. We're here in his office. He will explain to you, he will explain more about the content of the complaint.
Okay, well, thank you, and also on my part, welcome to everyone here at our law firm. For me, it's really a pleasure and a privilege to represent these clients, Fernando and SMX Collective, a group of bright and talented young professionals who are really committed to justice in Mexico. And Mexico may seem very far away from the Netherlands, but there are very close connections in several ways between the Netherlands and Mexico. Of course, the clients can explain far better than I what the consequences of the violence of the drugs cartels, but also the violence from the governments in Mexico is for the civilian population, and that the suffering for the civilian population in Mexico is enormous. I'm sure they can and will tell far more about that, so I will focus on the complaint we have filed today against the Rabobank. The Rabobank is a big bank, a bank with special responsibilities. They have branches in North America. One of the branches was in Calexico. It is closed now since January 2015. In that branch, there is information, reliable information, that there has been a situation of structural and long-lasting money laundering. That bank, that office was very, very close to the Mexican border. The names of the towns, actually, you would think they have been invented, but they are real. So the Californian part is Calexico, the Mexican part is Mexicali. So those are the two towns. And the drugs cartels have a very strong presence in that region. On the basis of this information, there is an ongoing criminal investigation in the United States. There have been other situations in the United States where banks have been investigated for money laundering. Generally, this ends through a deferred prosecution agreement, which is some sort of settlement. The most famous example is the HSBC Bank, which has settled for 1.9 billion, I repeat, 1.9 billion US dollars. That situation is ongoing. The question can, of course, arise, why not leave this to the Americans? The Americans, in their prosecution or in their investigations, are likely to have very, very little attention to the effects of money laundering for the civilian population in Mexico. And what clients want, and this is also emphasized in the complaint, is that money laundering under these circumstances is not a crime without victims. The proceeds of the crimes that are laundered by banks, including Rabobank, those profits are reinvested in the criminal acts of the drugs cartels in Mexico. And thereby, financial institutions contribute in a significant way to the suffering of the Mexican population. The crimes of the drugs cartels can even be qualified as crimes against humanity. There's a recent report from the Open Society Justice Initiative which has investigated the drugs cartels, and they have concluded that these cartels are organized in such an effective manner, they have so much power, they make so many deadly victims, that the crimes in Mexico by the drugs cartels can be qualified by as crimes against humanity. All of this information regarding the crimes in Mexico, the operation of the drugs cartels, that they need money laundering for their long-term survival, for their effective functioning, all of this information is available in public sources. As a result, it's also available to the Rabobank, now and also in the past. In spite of this knowledge, the Rabobank, according to our information and according to public sources, has not, I repeat, has not organized the supervision and control mechanisms on unusual transactions in an effective manner. As a result, we believe that the Rabobank is responsible, criminally responsible, not only for money laundering, but also for the consequences of money laundering for the Mexican civilian population. Under Dutch criminal law, we believe there's reason to investigate, to criminally investigate for these effects, and the label in Dutch criminal law would be membership of a criminal organization. In the complaint, which will be made publicly available, it's in Dutch, I describe in detail why there is a legal basis, a solid legal basis to investigate for both money laundering and for membership of a criminal organization. Then there's of course the question of the relationship between Rabobank Calexico, or Rabobank North America, so to speak, and the Rabobank Netherlands, the Rabobank group as a whole. And we believe that the criminal conduct in Calexico should be attributed to the Rabobank group as a whole. The Rabobank group as a whole has full authority over the North American branches, including the Calexico branch. Rabobank, is my understanding, does not deny things have gone wrong. On the contrary, there are some statements in the Volkskrant today in which they say, in the meantime, the supervision is adequate, which implies that it was not adequate at the time. What they also did is close Calexico branch immediately in January 2015. Closing of Calexico would not be logical if Rabobank would have thought there is nothing wrong with the Calexico branch. So there's a number of reasons why we have requested the Dutch Prosecution Service to start a criminal investigation in the Netherlands. We have requested the Prosecution Service to do it now, not to wait for the results of the American investigations. And we have a number of reasons. First of all, the focus of the Americans, as I already mentioned, is likely to be only on money laundering and not on the effects on the Mexican civilian population. And we really want this also to receive sufficient attention in a criminal investigation. And we think that only the Netherlands is capable of filling that gap. Another reason has to do with the judgment of the appeals court in the Libor interest fraud case. So my colleague, Mr. Spong, has tried to prosecute the Rabobank in the Netherlands for the Libor fraud. He has brought that to the appeals court. The appeals court has ruled that although things have gone wrong, that it's no longer possible to have proper criminal investigations in the Netherlands because there have already been so many other investigations that any criminal investigation in the Netherlands is likely to be tainted by previous internal investigations by the Rabobank or by other types of investigations. If this is the view of the court in the Netherlands, then there's every reason for the Dutch Prosecution Service to start criminal investigations fast, not to wait for other investigations to contaminate or to taint Dutch criminal investigations. We have done an analysis of some obstacles to prosecution in the Netherlands. We do not think there's an obstacle to prosecution in the Netherlands. There's jurisdiction. The crimes are also crimes under American law. So all the conditions, in our view, have been fulfilled to start the criminal investigations as fast as possible. And we do hope that the Dutch Prosecution Service will do so and will follow the complaint and will initiate the criminal investigations on very short notice. This is it for now. I'm available for questions. I know the language is English, but of course I'm also available for questions in Dutch. Not Spanish, I'm afraid. I apologize.
Yeah, we will wait a little bit with the questions, because first I want to give the word to Fernando Hernandez, whose family member has been killed by organized crime on the 16th of December 2010, and he will explain to you why he personally, from his position, despite of his complaints.
So, thank you very much for being here. For us, it's really flattering that actually this has caused so much attention. The first thing I'd like to say is that I feel a little bit ashamed, because my case, even though it's a tragedy, it's not even compared to the tragedy of many thousands of Mexican families that have suffered at the hands of the cartel and the hands of the organized crime in my country. Why we have done this is fundamental to explain. It is not that we believe that Rabobank has killed my family. That would be a little bit naive to say. But it is that we really tired in my country to be always on the losing side, basically because we always see a lot of people being dead, because a lot of money is being made, and because a lot of families have suffered just because they don't have an economic opportunity, or because they are part of a chain in which they just serve the purpose of money making. My family suffered a tragedy by the end of 2010, and my uncle was taken by the police, given to the cartel, and never seen ever since. And my aunt had to be looking for him and often asking to the state for his whereabouts. The official representatives told her, stop looking, because otherwise we'll be disappearing the family. This is the story of thousands of Mexicans. You will be handed in some statistics, but it's easy to find out that in Mexico, since 2006, there has been around 150,000. Some people now say even 200,000 people dead because of the war against drugs, from which around one-third, which is around 50,000 people, some people argue 50,000 people, have been forced disappeared. You may know the case of the 43 students, but like that, we have many cases in Mexico. So why is it that we were doing this? Well, it is because we believe that this horrendous and severe human crisis, a human rights crisis that is going on in Mexico, cannot only be explained if we start looking at the bigger picture. And in the bigger picture, there is this sentence that legitimizes violence in Mexico. We believe that money laundering is one of these pieces of the big puzzle that fuels the violence that basically killed my uncle, and that has implied or led to the forced disappearance and assassination of many other Mexicans. Now, do we believe that justice is going to be served in the case of my uncle? Probably not. But do we believe that there is something to be said about this company such as Rabobank that has a nice reputation in the Netherlands as the bank of the people? Well, we think that we want to have the same type of treatment in the Netherlands when it comes to the Bank of the People, but we also want to see how this Bank of the People has done to actually prevent the money laundering cartels from affecting the Mexican society. And I don't want to extend too much because I think you're going to be handed in some writing statements, and I rather wait for your questions because I think it's rather complicated to explain. But yes, I'm really grateful for you to be here, and we as an SNS Collective believe that this is going to be important because it's going to be sending a message to some companies in the Netherlands, but also to the Mexican society that we all can actually participate and try to achieve justice somehow.
much, Fernando. Right now, this is only the beginning of a campaign that we're launching as a SMX Collective. So on behalf of our collective, who are all here, I will read our statement. That is the beginning of our campaign. So today, we as SMX Collective take the first of many steps in the fight against the systemic human rights violations and impunity in Mexico. We are launching the campaign, Activating Justice in Mexico. Money laundering is not a victimless crime. And we will start by filing a complaint against the Rabobank group and its executives. So money laundering is a serious crime, which has already been mentioned. It has consequences far beyond banks and financial institutions. Money laundering strengthens the violence generated by organized crime, reinforces corruption, and legitimizes impunity, further deepening the severe human rights crisis in Mexico. Is it really a serious crime? Yes, it is. Then which crimes are committed under the umbrella of money laundering? It's a very long list. There's torture, intentional killings, forced disappearances, kidnapping, extortion, theft, piracy, trafficking of people, and the list goes on. Some of these crimes are defined by experts as crimes against humanity. And all these crimes are sponsored by money laundering. So for us, money laundering is just the tip of the iceberg. All these crimes are committed against people who have a face, who have a name, and who have a family, like you and like me. So a long list exists of people affected by the violence funded by money laundering, including children, teenagers, men, women, and journalists. As Fernando already mentioned, there are so many numbers about the disappearances, about the killings. To give you only a few, it's in the city of Ciudad Juárez, in the north of Mexico. Children are in some manner, 30,000 children are in some manner, in some way, involved in the complex structure of organized crime. Also, 12,000 children have been orphaned as a consequence of this violence. And 70,000 people are victims of human trafficking every year. And to give you a way to imagine this, this is about 1.5 times the Amsterdam arena at full capacity. In total, this produces $42 million for the criminals involved. So we're talking about large amounts of money. So, as a prominent Mexican intellectual said when visiting Amsterdam only recently in 2016, he said, the tragedy is that the outside world knows about impunity in Mexico, and yet business logic prevails. So we know that organized crime is part and parcel of the Mexican government. But today, we are focusing on the banks, on financial institutions, on firms, and specifically on one bank. So the SMX Collective believes that justice cannot be achieved if only the direct perpetrators are prosecuted. We demand that also those institutions like the Rabobank that benefit from the wealth created at such high cost of human life, if they are found guilty, we want them to be held accountable. As one of the victims of drug violence said, the prisons are full with people like us, yet the bankers who have enriched themselves through drug trafficking remain free. So, what do we want as an ex-collective? We urge the Dutch prosecutors to heed our call for an investigation into the money laundering by Rabobank Group. So by upholding their own principles and commitment to protect and defend human life above injustice and profits, we ask Dutch prosecutors not to be passive or silent. This investigation cannot end in a settlement that has happened many times before. So we ask the prosecutors not only to investigate if the Rabobank and its executives have done enough to prevent money laundering, but also to take into account the severe human consequences this crime provoked for many Mexicans in their daily lives. Only criminal prosecution can bring justice to the victims, although late, and serves as deterrent for other banks to engage in these practices. So besides our demands to the Dutch prosecutors, we also invite everybody to get involved in our campaign. So are you still a client of Rabobank? Please switch banks. Or you can file a complaint at the website of the Rabobank. But most of all, please follow our campaign and join in our actions. In general, this is only one of the many steps in our fight against the systemic human rights violations and impunity in Mexico. With this case, we hope to set a precedent. We hope that in the future, financial institutions will think twice before engaging in money laundering. And finally, we would like to stress that the violence in Mexico is not that far away as people might think. Because in Mexico, people die, while the Rabobank here in the Netherlands gets the money. So it is time for Mexico to get something else, and that is justice. That's it. Thank you. So this was our statement of the campaign, and now we have time for questions. So please. Anyone want to start?
To elaborate, you are attacking a Rabobank in Holland, but it's American entity, I think. But that's not the problem. Can you explain why?
Yes, we explained it also in detail in the complaint. It's a branch that is part of the Rabobank group as a whole, for which the Rabobank has full authority. And so the actions of the branch are also attributable to the Rabobank group as a whole.
But is it legal possible to file a complaint of file how do you say dat, een aangifte doen? Ja, voor mij is het een beetje lastig.
Mag ook in het Nederlands?
Ja. Is het legaal mogelijk om een aangifte te doen tegen een Amerikaanse entiteit?
Nou, we doen aangifte tegen de Rabobank Nederland, de Rabobank groep. En de feitelijk leidinggevende. We zeggen niet in de aangifte wie dat zijn, want dat zal een strafrechtelijk onderzoek precies moeten uitwijzen. En die Rabobank groep in Nederland, die draagt ook verantwoordelijkheid voor dochterondernemingen. En dat is misschien goed dat wat te zeggen, maar we hebben daar recent ook als kantoor een positieve uitspraak ook in de Shell-zaak. Dat is een hele andere zaak, maar ook in die zaak werd besloten dat de dochteronderneming van Shell in Nigeria, dat het handelen daarvan kan worden toegeschreven of toegerekend aan Shell.
En heeft het ooit een aanklacht moeten dienen?
Ja.
Maar het OM moet dus bepalen wie uiteindelijk aangepakt is door Rabobank? Welke persoon?
Ja, dat is het lastige met rechtspersoon. Het gevolg van rechtspersonen, dat is de rechtspersoon als zodanig. Daarvoor gelden regels van strafrechtelijke aansprakelijkheid. Maar ook de feitelijke leidinggevende. Dus het is de rechtspersoon en of de feitelijke leidinggevende. En wie op een gegeven moment heeft kunnen zeggen, dat is de voorzitter van de raad van bestuur. Maar ik vond en vind het zuiver om dat te laten afhangen van een strafrechtelijk onderzoek. In het kader van een strafrechtelijk onderzoek kun je dan die organisatiestructuur goed in beeld krijgen en bekijken van wie er ten aanzien van het toezichtsmechanisme over dit was, want daar gaat het over. Welke bestuurder binnen Rabobank daarvoor de specifieke verantwoordelijkheid draagt. Of daar het meeste verwijten valt. En dat laat ik gaan aan het openbaar bestuur. In Nederland, ja, omdat...
Het gaat om leidinggeving in Nederland, niet om leidinggeving die Calixto spelen.
Nee, het gaat om leidinggeving met een Nederlandse nationaliteit, omdat het dan rechtsmacht is. Dat zou in theorie ook leidinggeving in Amerika kunnen zijn. Want die hebben de Nederlandse nationaliteit en dan is er rechtsmacht voor Nederland. Maar dat zal het onderzoek dan moeten uitwijzen.
Any other questions in English or Dutch?
Oh, maybe Spanish for you.
Yeah, I actually do have a question. You see that, money laundering and corruption and so on are not a victimless crime, and that's what you want to emphasize with this campaign. thing, which I really applaud. There is a case of, I think it was a Swiss bank, HSBC, and that was last year, that was sued in America, and in the USA it is possible, because what you see is that if you sue it under a lawsuit of money laundering, that victims, such as you yourself, get very little recourse for physical pain or mental pain in this case. They get very little compensation for that. But in the USA it's possible to file this lawsuit under terrorism, which would give more possibilities for victims to get compensation. Would this be possible in this particular case? And in the Netherlands?
That we are aware of this lawsuit. We have studied it as well.
Yeah.
That's an ongoing lawsuit in which they asked for a jury trial. At least that's my most recent information. So, to my knowledge, there's not a verdict yet in that lawsuit. And I have looked also at that U.S. terrorism laws are not exactly the same as the Dutch terrorism laws. So I see also some legal difficulties. So that said, we also made the deliberate choice to focus on criminal prosecution. So that is justice in the, we think this case requires criminal prosecution. If there is a criminal case in the Netherlands, then victims can be parties civil, they can be civil parties, benaderde partijen. But we have to wait and see if we will make that decision and if and how we will do that. But it's also to show that the clients first and foremost are after justice and they are not engaged in civil proceedings. At least not for the moment.
Can I just add a little? For us, this issue of compensation is very important because our focus, as you well captured, is really the victims. When there are compensations, such as in the HSBC case some years ago, also in the US, the victims, the balance of these dead bodies that actually are part of the machinery of money making by the organized crime, are two times victimized. Of course, once because they are killed or disappear, but also in the settlements, they never come up. So, of course, money laundering is only the white or the cleaning of the dirty money is that metaphor of basically the crime's money, right? So that crime produces dead people, and we believe that dead people never comes up in these settlements. So this is very important for us right now. The compensation of the victims is not really on the table. We know in that debate we are on the justice debate. Why do we have to put always the dead bodies and the bankers and all the people that are doing also the crime, the money laundering, are living the nice life? That's what it's about.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any further questions? No? Okay, then we will close the press conference. Here you find information. You will find information, the press release, also our statement, and the complaint. So please take it with you. It's in several languages. So yeah.
But the complaint is only in Dutch. Sorry.
But on our website you can find summaries in English and Spanish to take into account. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
We're also available for interviews, by the way.
And you have to say also that I have used.
Yeah.